Before you enter a room, something has already been decided about you. It's not conscious, it's not fair, but it's definitive. The human brain measures risk before it listens to words, and anyone who doesn't project danger is automatically pushed down the hierarchy. People don't respect those who explain. They don't follow those who ask. They don't fear those who need to be understood. They observe silence, posture, economy of movement. And when they don't feel a cost to challenging you, they move in. They always move in. You were trained to confuse kindness with safety, transparency with strength, accessibility with leadership. This comfortable morality creates readable, predictable, exploitable individuals. The world doesn't punish you for being cruel. It punishes you for seeming harmless. Machiavelli saw this without romanticizing it. Power is not born of love. It is born of the perception that crossing you has a price. Jung would call it the unintegrated shadow. Nietzsche would call it herd morality. Robert Greene would call it a fatal framing error. This is not about yelling, intimidating, or becoming a caricatured tyrant. It's about presence, about the silence that makes the other person measure their words, about the void that forces respect. There is a precise way to build this, an inversion that changes how you are treated without you saying a word. Once you see it, there's no going back. Right now, you are invisible. You walk into a room and no one turns their head. You speak in a meeting and someone talks over you. You try to set a boundary and people ignore it, test it, trample it. You smile more. You explain better. You try to be more helpful, more kind, more available. And the more you try, the more you disappear. Because you're playing the wrong game with the wrong rules on a battlefield you don't understand. Presence is not genetic luck. It's not a birthright. It's not mystical charisma that some people have and others don't. It's psychological architecture. It's behavioral engineering. It's a series of specific signals, calibrated with surgical precision, that activate primitive circuits in other people's brains. Circuits that assess dominance, detect threat, calculate status, and decide who deserves respect and who deserves to be discarded. And you've been sending the wrong signals your entire life. Look around. The coworker who interrupts you every time you open your mouth. The group that keeps talking when you try to contribute. The feeling of shouting into an empty room while others whisper and are heard. These are not accidents. They are consequences. Consequences of a weak presence. A presence that begs for attention instead of commanding it. That asks permission to exist instead of simply occupying space as a law of nature. Niccolo Machiavelli, the most brutal architect of the psychology of power, understood a truth that modern society desperately tries to hide from you. He knew that fear and respect are twin brothers. That true authority doesn't ask permission, doesn't explain, doesn't justify. It simply exists. Like gravity. Like a force that alters behavior around it without needing to shout, without needing to threaten, without needing to do anything other than be. The cultural belief you were fed, that presence is innate, that some people are born with it and others are doomed to invisibility, is a lie. A comfortable lie designed to keep the majority docile, explanatory, small. But you're here because that lie started to hurt, because you're tired of being ignored, tired of being interrupted, tired of feeling like you have to shout to be heard, and even then, your words evaporate into the air. Today we're going to dissect the 7 Machiavellian principles that build a presence of power. A presence so dense, so gravitational, that people feel instinctive discomfort when challenging it. I'll show you how to shift the economy of attention in your favor. How to use silence as a psychological weapon that forces others to lean toward you. How to control your voice, your body, and your space so the environment reorganizes itself around your presence. How to become emotionally impenetrable. How to turn mystery into magnetism. And how to install automatic consequences that teach without words that you are not negotiable. But be warned, this requires the assassination of parts of you. The part that seeks constant approval. The part that over-explains. The part that fears silence and fills voids with empty words. The part that confuses performative niceness with strength. If you love these parts, if you're not ready to bury them, turn this off now. Because what comes next doesn't build likable people. It builds forces. Let's begin. So why are you ignored? Why, when you enter a room, does no one adjust their posture? Why don't your words stick? The answer lies in the primitive economy of attention, and you have been violating the fundamental law of that economy your entire life. The law is simple, brutal, and counterintuitive. Attention flows to those who demonstrate the least need for it. Think about the last time you tried to contribute to a conversation. You leaned forward. You slightly raised your voice. Maybe you touched someone's arm to get attention. You made a joke or asked a question to insert yourself. And the moment you did that, you marked yourself as low value. Because all of those behaviors scream the same thing. Please see me. Please validate me. Please confirm that I exist. This is not strategy. It's social begging. And the limbic system of the people around you, the primitive part of the brain that evaluates status and dominance, interprets that begging as a clear signal. Low on the hierarchy. Non-threat. Safe to ignore. Compare that to the person in the same room who speaks less, who doesn't lean in, who doesn't compete for attention. When that person speaks, the sound is different. There's no urgency. There's no effort. The sentence simply lands in the space like a stone in a calm lake. And everyone stops. Everyone turns. Why? Because scarcity creates value. Because lack of need signals abundance. And abundance signals power. The biology behind this is ancient. Your brain evolved in tribal groups where resources, food, protection, mates, flowed to the top of the hierarchy. Those at the top didn't need to beg. Those who begged were at the bottom. So when you try too hard to be noticed, you activate in other people's brains the same categorization they would use for a servant asking a favor of a king. You're not being cruel to yourself. You're being honest about the biological reality of group dynamics. There is a Machiavellian technique to invert this. Stop chasing attention. Stop leaning in. Stop filling silences. When someone speaks, don't jump into immediate competition. Let their sentence breathe. Let 1 second of vacuum pass. 2 seconds. 3. And only then, if what you have to say is worth it, you speak. Slowly, without urgency, like someone doing a favor by sharing. Picture the scene. A work meeting. Someone proposes an idea. Immediately, 3 people start talking at once, competing to add correct impress. You lean back. You cross your arms. You observe. You let the chaos play out. And when the noise dies down, when silence returns, you speak. 1 sentence. Calm. Precise. And you don't repeat it if someone didn't hear. If they missed it, that's their problem. Do you see the difference? The others were begging for participation. You granted contribution. And that single adjustment, from attention chaser to selective giver of it, changes everything. People start paying attention before you speak because they learn that when you do speak, they either listen the first time or they lose it. This requires brutal ego control. Your ego will scream, "Speak now, prove your value, show that you're smart." You have to strangle that scream. You have to sit with the anxiety of not being seen immediately. Because what you're doing is not hiding. It's positioning yourself as a scarce resource. And scarce resources don't beg to be used. Now we move to the most lethal principle of a powerful presence. Mastery of strategic silence. Most people fear silence the way a child fears the dark. In a conversational pause, discomfort rises. Anxiety spikes. And to kill that discomfort, they talk. They fill the void with words, jokes, questions, anything to restore the sound flow. Machiavelli would call this a fatal weakness. Understand this. Silence is not the absence of communication. Silence is a weapon. When you allow a pause, when you hold the vacuum without breaking it, something profound happens in the other person's brain. Human beings have a biological fear of ruptures in the social fabric. In tribal times, silence during interaction meant possible threat, possible rejection, possible imminent violence. So when you don't fill the silence, you force the other person's nervous system to interpret, "Something is wrong. I need to fix it." And what do? They start talking. They start explaining. They start filling the space you created. And by doing that, they hand over control. Because whoever is speaking to fill a vacuum is reacting, and whoever is creating the vacuum is commanding. There is a specific technique. When someone asks you an invasive question, throws a provocation, or makes a passive-aggressive comment, the instinctive reaction is to respond immediately. Defend, explain, correct. Don't do that. Look at the person. Maintain eye contact. Don't blink. Don't smile. Don't frown. Neutral face. And let the silence stretch. 3 seconds. 5 seconds. 10. Do you know what happens? They start to collapse. Their confidence wavers. They begin to repeat the question in a different way. I mean, you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but they start to laugh nervously. They start to justify themselves. And you didn't say a single word. You simply existed in silence. And the silence did the work of 100 sentences. Compare 2 situations. Situation A. Someone says, "You're always late. You don't respect other people's time?" Common response, "It's not always. There was traffic today, and last week I got here early, remember?" Defensive, weak, begging for understanding. Situation B. Same provocation. You. Look. Silence. 5 full seconds. Them. I mean, not that it's always, but today was kind of. You. Still silent. Neutral face. Them. Okay, forget it. Do you see it? In the first, you entered their frame. You became the defendant in their courtroom. In the second, you created a psychological vacuum they couldn't tolerate, and they backed down. Without you defending yourself. Without you explaining. You simply occupied silence the way a predator occupies territory. This isn't about being rude. It's about refusing to participate in social dominance games where the rule is, whoever defends themselves loses. When you don't play, the game disintegrates. And the person who tried to put you on the defensive is left holding an attack with no target. The internal resistance will be brutal. Your brain will interpret silence as social danger. It will spike cortisol. It will scream at you to fix the rupture, restore harmony. Ignore it. That discomfort is the price of transformation. Sit in it. Breathe through it. And watch how, by sustaining silence, you force the environment to reorganize around you. The third principle is control of nonverbal communication, and this is where most people fail without knowing it. Nonverbal communication is everything that isn't words: volume, tone, speed, pauses, inflection. You can say no and sound like a question or like a decree. The difference isn't the word, it's the how. People without presence speak too loudly, too fast, with rising inflection that turns statements into questions. I think we should do this. Hear the lift at the end, that's a request for validation. Like I was thinking, that maybe we could. Every filler word is a signal of cognitive insecurity. Your brain is processing in real time and leaking the process. That is audible weakness. Contrast that with presence of power. Low, steady volume. No shouting. No competing with noise. A tone that forces others to lean in to hear. Reduced speed. Deliberate pauses between sentences. Zero filler sounds. Every word is a choice, not a nervous reaction. There is a biological reason. High volume signals effort. Effort signals a need to convince. A need to convince signals lack of authority. Those with real authority don't need to shout. The king whispers and the kingdom falls silent to listen. Fast speed signals anxiety. Anxiety signals that you fear losing attention if you don't talk fast. But true presence doesn't fear losing attention because it knows that if attention is lost, it wasn't valuable to begin with. So it slows down, pauses, lets words land before adding more. Specific technique. Before you speak, breathe. 1 full inhale, and speak on the exhale. This forces natural slowing. Eliminate like, so, kind of, all verbal crutches. If you don't know what to say, don't fill the space with sound. Let the pause exist while you formulate the thought. Practical example, common. Like, I think you know that we kind of should consider another approach, right? Power. Pause. Breathe. There is a better approach. Stop talking. The first version is noise. The second is command. And the difference lies entirely in control of nonverbal communication. When you remove the crutches, when you slow down, when you lower volume to the point of forcing attention, you sound like someone who doesn't need to convince because they already know. And people follow those who seem to know, not those who seem to hope others do. This requires surgical practice. Record yourself speaking. Listen back. Identify every like, every you know, every upward inflection that turns a statement into a question, and eliminate them, one by one, until your speech becomes clean, slow, non-negotiable. When you master this, even a good morning carries weight, because it's not the words, it's the sonic architecture around them. The fourth principle is Machiavellian spatial positioning, and you are losing physical ground every day without realizing it. Presence isn't only psychological, it's geometric. It's about how much space you occupy, how you occupy it, and whether you apologize for occupying it. Observe people without presence. Rounded shoulders, arms tucked in, small steps. When they sit, they compress. When someone invades their space, they retreat. When they walk toward someone, they yield first. Every adjustment is nonverbal submission, constant signaling. Sorry for existing, sorry for occupying atoms, I can shrink more if needed. Machiavelli understood that physical territory and psychological territory are inseparable. When you yield space without resistance, you train others to invade. When you compress yourself to accommodate others' comfort, you announce, my boundaries are negotiable. Spatial occupation technique. When you sit, open up. Arms on the chair's rests. Legs at a comfortable angle, not squeezed together. Occupy all the space the chair offers. When someone invades, leans on your chair back, places an object in your space. Don't retreat immediately. Hold position. Force them to notice the invasion. If necessary, move the object back without comment. Re-establish the boundary without apologizing. When you walk, use geometry. Don't automatically step aside. Maintain trajectory. If someone approaches from the opposite direction, don't always be the one to move. Keep speed and direction. Force the other person to decide, move or collide. 90% move. And when they do, they subconsciously learn, this person does not negotiate space. Standing posture upright, not military rigidity but aligned spine, shoulders back, chest open. This isn't just aesthetics, it's hormonal signaling. Open posture increases testosterone, reduces cortisol. You literally feel more powerful when you occupy more space. And that feeling leaks through micro-expressions others pick up subliminally. Visual example. Meeting. Rectangular table. Average person sits, pulls the chair in, occupies the bare minimum, arms tight to the body. Presence of power. Sits, pushes the chair slightly back, arms on the rests, papers spread in front, occupying not only their space, but a margin of the neighboring space. Not aggressive, but not apologetic. Result? The room unconsciously recognizes this person does not ask permission to exist, and that is read as status. Because in any hierarchy, those at the top don't compress. Kings don't squeeze into corners, they occupy centers. You don't need to be a king, but you do need to stop acting like a servant. The practice is constant. Every day in every environment ask, am I compressing out of real necessity or out of a habit of submission? If it's habit, expand, occupy, and watch how the environment adjusts around you, not the other way around. Fifth principle, zero reactivity. This is the psychological armor that transforms you from an easy target into an impenetrable fortress. People without presence are emotionally transparent. Insult them, they blush. Provoke them, they react. Manipulate them, they dance. And every reaction is a string manipulators pull to control. Machiavelli advised that the prince should appear compassionate, but never allow compassion to dictate strategy. Translated to presence, you may have emotions, but you can never allow emotions to leak into expressions that make you predictable. Understand the mechanism. When someone provokes you and you react, red face, altered voice, wide eyes, you've given feedback. You taught the provocateur exactly where it hurts. You taught them that button works. And now they have a remote control to your emotional state. They can activate you whenever they want. Zero reactivity breaks that control. When you don't react, when your face remains a neutral mask regardless of stimulus, you create something disturbing in the other. Uncertainty. They don't know if the attack landed. They don't know if you're angry, indifferent, or secretly planning revenge. That ambiguity is terrifying, because humans need to read each other to navigate interactions. When you're illegible, you're unpredictable, and unpredictable is dangerous. Training technique, controlled exposure. Watch videos of people insulting you. Try to maintain a neutral expression. Breathe slowly. Don't allow micro-expressions of anger or hurt. It sounds simple. It is brutally difficult, because your amygdala will fire, will want you to react, defend, attack. Your job is override. Prefrontal cortex dominating the limbic system. Consciousness dominating instinct. Example in action, someone says, "You're pathetic, no one here respects you." Reactive. Face turns red. "That's not true, who said that? I work harder than anyone here." Lost. You prove the attack worked. Zero reactivity. Look, neutral face. 3-second pause. Interesting. Go back to what you were doing. Devastating. Because you didn't deny, didn't confirm, didn't enter the game. You treated the insult like a weather report, irrelevant. Or better, look, neutral face. Complete silence. Return to what you were doing without a word. Master level. Because even interesting is a reaction. Absolute silence is vacuum, and psychological vacuums are unbearable for attackers. What does this do to the aggressor? They expected a dance. Defense, anger, hurt. They got stone, and stones don't dance. So they try again, harder. You're not even going to respond. Pathetic. And you, still neutral, still silent. And every failed attempt makes them look more desperate. They're punching fog. And they start to doubt whether the punch means anything. This requires the death of the performative ego, the part of you that wants to prove you're not pathetic, that wants to be seen as good, smart, respectable. You must kill that part. Because while it lives, you are hostage to other people's opinions. And hostages don't have presence. They have vulnerability. When you master zero reactivity, you become an emotional ghost. Others project emotions onto you but never know if they're right, and that uncertainty creates respect born of unease. They don't necessarily love you, but they respect you, because you are an unknown force, and the unknown always commands more respect than the predictable. Sixth principle, the economy of personal revelation. You are giving yourself away for free. Every personal story, every detail of your life, every opinion you share without being asked. All of that is currency. And currency loses value when it's distributed without criteria. People without presence are open books. They tell their entire life story to people they just met. They share traumas, insecurities, dreams, fears. They think this creates connection. Sometimes it does, but it never creates respect. Because familiarity doesn't generate admiration. It generates comfort, and comfort is the opposite of a presence of power. Machiavelli knew that mystery is magnetism. When people don't fully know you, they fill in the gaps with projections. And those projections are usually more interesting than reality. You become a blank canvas onto which they paint their own fantasies of who you are. And while they paint, they're fascinated. The moment you reveal everything, the canvas disappears. Now they know exactly who you are. They can categorize you. They can file you away. And filed things don't fascinate. They just exist. Informational containment technique. When someone asks a personal question, You have options beyond fully answering. You can deflect with humor. That's a story for after a few beers. You can answer vaguely. It's complicated. You can simply not answer. Slight smile. Next question. Every non-answer adds a layer of mystery. Don't confuse this with lying. You don't invent false stories. You simply don't distribute truths for free. Information about you is a strategic asset. Use it with purpose. Example, casual encounter. Someone asks, "What do you do?" Common answer. I work in digital marketing at an edtech startup. I joined 3 years ago after graduating in communications. Before that, I interned at... Presence answer. I work with communication. Stop talking. If they push. Oh yeah? What kind? You. Digital. Stop again. Do you see it? You didn't lie. But you also didn't hand over the full map. You forced them to work to know you. And work creates investment. Investment creates perceived value. This applies to opinions as well. People without presence have opinions about everything and share them without filter. Politics, religion, culture, trivialities, they can't hold back. And every expressed opinion is a weapon others can use against you. Every declared position is an attackable surface. Presence of power is selective. It speaks about what matters. About the rest? I haven't thought much about that. I'm still processing. I don't have a formed position. That's not weakness, it's defensive economy. You preserve psychological territory by refusing to plant flags where it doesn't matter. When you master the economy of revelation, you become an enigma others want to solve. And while they try to solve you, they're engaged. They're chasing. And whoever chases is automatically in an inferior position to whoever is being chased. You've inverted the standard dynamic where you beg for attention. Now they beg for access. Seventh and most devastating principle, the technique of inevitable consequence. This is where you install the final defense system, because all previous principles built presence. This one installs the cost of violating that presence. Most people set boundaries with words and then fail to enforce them with actions. Don't do that again. And it happens again. And the person complains again. And the cycle continues because there is no real consequence. Words without action are noise, and noise is ignored. Machiavelli taught that punishment must be inevitable and proportional, not emotional, not explained, simply executed like a law of nature. You cross the line, the consequence comes, automatic, non-negotiable, like gravity. You jump off a building, you fall. There's no discussion, no second chance, just physics. Applied to presence, when someone disrespects your boundaries, interrupts you repeatedly, invades your space, ignores your time, the consequence is not a lecture. It's a silent, irreversible action. You don't explain why you're acting. You simply act. Specific technique, a 3-level system. Level 1, first violation, you notice. You don't react emotionally, but you mark it mentally. So-and-so interrupted 3 times in this meeting. Level 2, second violation, a soft but perceptible consequence. If they interrupt you again, you stop sharing valuable information with them. You don't announce it. They simply stop receiving your insights, your ideas, your time. Silently, you cut them off from resources that previously flowed for free. Level 3, third violation, definitive consequence. You remove presence. In a professional context, they stop existing in your consideration. You don't badmouth them. You don't create drama. You simply act as if they're furniture, polite greeting if necessary, zero real engagement. They have socially died in your world. Practical example, a coworker constantly interrupts you in meetings. Common response, "Hey, can you let me finish?" Verbal, emotional, ineffective. They'll do it again. Inevitable consequence. First time, you notice, don't react. Second time, at the next meeting, when they ask your opinion on their project, you say, "I don't have a formed position on that." Before you gave ideas for free. Now the source dried up. Third time, you stop attending meetings where they'll be present if you can avoid it. If you can't, you speak the minimum necessary and direct all energy and insights to other people in the room. Result? They don't consciously know why you went cold, but they feel it. They feel the loss of access. They feel that something changed. And if they have even minimal social intelligence, they will unconsciously connect it. When I disrespect this person, something bad happens to me. This is not revenge. Revenge is emotional, reactive, disproportionate. This is social physics. You simply remove rewards for behavior you don't tolerate. And people, like all organisms, repeat what is rewarded and avoid what has a cost. The power of this technique lies in silence. You don't announce. You don't threaten. You don't warn. You simply execute. And silent execution is terrifying because it's unpredictable. They don't know exactly where the line is until they cross it. And when they do, the consequence is already happening. When you master inevitable consequence, you become a walking law. People learn without you ever teaching verbally that rules exist around you. Invisible but real rules. And violating those rules has a price. This unconscious learning is what we call respect born from experience. Not from words, but from patterns. Breathe. Let the 7 principles settle. You now understand the complete architecture of presence of power. Economy of attention that inverts need. Strategic silence that disarms provocation. Control of nonverbal communication that turns sound into command. Spatial positioning that refuses compression. Zero reactivity that creates psychological armor. Economy of revelation that preserves mystery. Inevitable consequence that installs respect through patterns, not words. But knowing the path is not walking it. Your biology will resist. Every time you hold silence while your brain screams to fill it, you will feel physical discomfort. Every time you occupy space without apologizing, you will feel tribal guilt. Every time you don't react to provocation, your amygdala will fire social danger alarms. That discomfort is not a sign of error. It's a sign of transformation. The temptation will be to go back. Back to over-explaining. Back to filling silences. Back to compressing yourself to accommodate. Because it's comfortable. Because it's familiar. Because the tribe rewards those who remain docile, accessible, small. But you didn't come this far to remain small. Most people will watch this, feel the impact for 30 seconds, and tomorrow they'll be back to old patterns. Back to begging for attention. Back to filling vacuums with empty words. Back to shrinking when someone invades space. They'll choose the comfort of invisibility over the courage of presence. And they'll continue being interrupted, ignored, dismissed, complaining that the world is unfair while violating every law of presence that exists. But you're still here. You read every principle to the end. That means something. It means a part of you, maybe small, maybe buried under years of social conditioning, recognizes truth when it sees it. Recognizes that presence is not mystery. It's method. Here is the test. It's simple. It's brutal. At the next meeting, the next social encounter, the next moment where you would normally fill silence or compress or react, you will do the opposite. You will hold the pause. You will occupy space. You will keep a neutral face while your brain screams. And you will observe. Observe how people literally lean forward when you create vacuum. Observe how the room reorganizes itself around your physical presence when you stop apologizing for existing. Observe how provocations lose power when they ricochet off zero reactivity. Observe how mystery creates pursuit when you stop giving yourself away for free. This single experiment will reveal more about power dynamics than 1,000 books, because you will feel it in your body. You will feel the discomfort of breaking old patterns. You will feel the power of installing new ones. And you will feel, perhaps for the first time, what it's like to enter a room and have the environment adjust around you instead of you adjusting to the environment. If this opened your eyes, understand this. This is only what I can show publicly. There are aspects of presence building I can't discuss openly without violating social norms that keep the majority docile. Deeper framing control techniques, methods of installing fear without explicit threat, The exact psychology of when to strategically break your own principles to maximize impact. That exists, but not here. Click subscribe not because I asked. Subscribe because you made a decision. The decision to stop being invisible, to stop begging for space you have the right to occupy, to stop being interrupted, ignored, discarded. The subscription is merely the external symbol of an internal choice. You chose presence over invisibility. You chose strength over approval. You chose being respected over being understood. The world was built to keep you small, explanatory, reactive. Refuse. Occupy space. Hold silence. Become illegible. And watch how, by becoming a gravitational force, you stop chasing respect and start receiving it as a law of nature. I'll see you in the shadows.